A man goes into a baker's and asks for 2 bread rolls. The shopman picks them up with tongs and puts them in a paper bag. He then asks for 2 cakes. The shopman picks them up with the tongs and puts them in the bag. The man says, "It's nice to see you don't handle the food." The shopman says, "Nothing in my shop is handled by human hand." He then noticed a piece of string hanging out of the shopman's trousers and asks, "What is that piece of string for?" The shopman says, "When I need a piss, I just pull on the string and it pops out." "That's okay," says the man. "But how do you put it back?" "That's no problem," says the shopman. "I just use the tongs." The English teacher cleared her throat and asked, "What word starts with F and ends in K that means a lot of heat and excitement?" The principal, who had been casually listening from the back, suddenly sat up straight, his face turning pale. His eyes darted nervously toward Johnny, silently pleading for him to stay out of trouble. Johnny, without missing a beat, confidently answered, "Fire truck." A married couple walks through the zoo and stops by the gorilla enclosure. The woman says, "Mark, did you know gorillas behave a lot like humans? Watch this. I'm going to test it with a little harmless fun." She discreetly shows one shoulder. The gorilla immediately reacts, pounding on the bars. "See?" she says. "Like us, gorillas can't resist their instincts." Mark smiles. "Now show both shoulders. Let's see what happens." She does, and the gorilla gets even more excited, banging harder on the cage. Mark says, "All right, now turn around and show your back. Let's see the reaction." She turns, and the gorilla gets very worked up, hitting the bars fiercely and trying to break free. The woman nervously asks, "Mark, what now?" Mark calmly replies, "Tell him you're tired and not in the mood. Let's see if gorillas and humans are really that similar." My grandson gave me that suspicious look the other day. "Grandpa," he said, "why do you always make up weird rules?" "Oh yeah?" I said. "Like what?" He folded his arms. "Like when you said if I don't clean my room, a portal will open and suck me into another dimension." I nodded seriously. "That's how we lost your older brother." He stared. "What older brother?" I just smiled. "Exactly. He cleaned his room in 5 minutes flat." After his checkup, the doctor smiled at the elderly man and said, "Well, you seem to be in great shape. Any health concerns on your mind?" "Actually, yes, Doc," the old man replied. "Every time I make love to my wife after the first round, I'm hot and sweaty. But after the second time, I'm freezing and shivering. What's up with that?" Curious, the doctor decided to examine his wife as well. After finishing, he reassured her, "You're in perfect health. Do you have any concerns or questions for me?" She shook her head. "Nope, I'm all good." The doctor scratched his head. "Well, your husband mentioned something odd. He says after the first time you make love, he's burning up. But after the second time, he's shivering like it's winter. Any idea why?" The elderly lady rolled her eyes and chuckled. "Oh, that silly old man. That's because the first time is in August and the second time is in January." I forgot to zip my pants today, so a lady politely told me, "Sir, your garage is open." I zipped them up and asked, "Did you see my monster truck parked inside?" The lady smiled back and said, "No, just one small Toyota with 2 flat tires. I'm still crying." A husband comes home from work and finds his wife missing. Panicked, he spends 2 whole days searching everywhere for her. On the second night, exhausted, he walks into the kitchen, only to find his wife calmly sitting there, eating a bowl of pasta. "You're alive! Where have you been all this time?" he cries. She looks up and says, "4 men kidnapped me and have been having wild with me for a week." The husband frowns and says, "But you've only been gone for 2 days." She shrugs. "Yeah, I just nipped home to grab something to eat." A middle-aged couple, Mr. and Mrs. Zero Shea, had two beautiful daughters, but always talked about having a son. They decided to try one last time for the son they always wanted. The wife got pregnant and delivered a healthy baby boy. The joyful father rushed to the nursery to see his new son. He was horrified at the ugliest child he had ever seen. He told his wife, "There's no way I can be the father of this baby. Look at the two beautiful daughters I fathered. Have you been fooling around behind my back?" The wife smiled sweetly and replied, "No, not this time." It was a sunny Saturday morning, and Mike was beginning his pre-shot routine, visualizing his upcoming shot when a voice came over the clubhouse speaker. "Would the gentleman on the ladies' tee please back up to the men's tee?" Mike, still deep in his routine, seemed impervious to the interruption. Again the announcement. "Would the man on the ladies' tee kindly back up to the men's tee, please?" Mike had had enough. He turned and shouted, "Would the announcer in the clubhouse kindly shut up and let me play my second shot?" The poor little rich girl awoke after a long night out on the town with her friends. She found herself totally naked and with a monster of a hangover, so she rang for her butler and ordered a strong cup of black coffee. When he delivered it, she said, "Jeeves, I can't remember a thing about last night. How did I get to bed?" "I carried you upstairs, ma'am, and put you to bed." "But my dress?" "It seemed a pity to crumple it, so I removed it and hung it in your closet." "But what about my underwear?" "I feared the elastic might limit your circulation, so I took the liberty of removing them." "What a night," she sighed. "I must have been tight." "Only the first time, ma'am." Two teenagers, Fred and Joe, meet after school, and Fred is all excited. "Man, I was at the most awesome party this weekend. We went to this dude's house and guy had toilets made of pure gold." "No way." "Yes way," insists Fred. "Come with me and check it out for yourself if you don't believe me." 20 minutes later, they're ringing the doorbell at the place. A middle-aged lady opens and Fred eagerly asks her, "Hi, I'm sorry to bother you, but there was a party at your house yesterday and my friend doesn't believe that you have toilet bowls of pure gold." The lady looks at him for a moment and then yells into the inside of the house, "Roger, the pig that shat in your trombone is here." A lawyer calls up a plumber to come out to his house. The plumber takes a look and says, "Okay, I can fix it today and it will be $800. The lawyer raises an eyebrow and asks, "How long will it take?" The plumber responds, "Well, I need about an hour round trip to the supply house for a part, and then it should take me about an hour for the repair." The lawyer smirks and says, 2 hours for $800. That's $400 per hour. I'm a lawyer and my hourly rate is $350 hour. The plumber nods and says, "Yes, sir, I understand. Why is it you think I gave up my law practice?" A man walks into a pet shop and says to the owner, "I want a pet, but nothing boring, no cats, no dogs, no birds. I want something really different." The shop owner smiles and says, "Well, I do have something special, a talking centipede." The man is amazed. "A talking centipede, really? How much?" $50, the owner replies. So the man happily buys the centipede, takes it home in a little matchbox, sets it on the table, and opens it. He says, "Hey, mate, want to go to the pub for a few drinks?" Silence. Thinking the centipede might just be tired from the trip, he decides to wait an hour. After an hour, he opens the matchbox again and says, "Hey, mate, want to go to the pub for a few drinks?" Still nothing. Now he's annoyed, but he decides to give it one last chance. Another hour later, he opens the box a third time and shouts, "Hey, do you want to go to the pub for a few drinks or not?" Finally, a tiny voice yells back, "For fuck's sake, I heard you the first time. I'm putting my shoes on." Teacher. What is soft, but on a woman's hand becomes hard? Johnny. Nail polish, miss. The principal is beside himself at this point, but before he could interject. Teacher. What do men and women have in the middle of their legs? Johnny. Knees. Teacher. What do married women have wider than unmarried women? Johnny. Beds. Teacher. Which part of my body gets dripping wet when I'm excited? Johnny. Your tongue. Murphy showed up at Mass one Sunday, and the priest almost fell down when he saw him. He'd never been to church in his life. After Mass, the priest caught up with him and said, "Murphy, I am so glad you decided to come to Mass. What made you come?" Murphy said, "I got to be honest with you, Father. A while back, I misplaced me hat, and I really, really love that hat. I know that McGlynn had a hat just like mine, and I knew he came to church every Sunday. I also knew that he had to take off his hat during Mass and figured he would leave it in the back of church, so I was going to leave after communion and steal McGlynn's hat." The priest said, "Well, Murphy, I noticed that you didn't steal McGlynn's hat. What changed your mind?" Murphy replied, "Well, after I heard your sermon on the 10 Commandments, I decided that I didn't need to steal McGlynn's hat after all." With a tear in his eye, the priest gave Murphy a big smile and said, "After I talked about thou shalt not steal, you decided you would rather do without your hat than burn in hell, eh?" Murphy slowly shook his head. "No, Father. After you talked about thou shalt not commit adultery, and that reminded me where I left me hat." A wife comes home late one night and quietly opens the door to her bedroom. From under the blanket, she sees 4 legs instead of just her husband's 2. She reaches for a baseball bat and starts hitting the blanket as hard as she can. Once she's done, she goes to the kitchen to have a drink. As she enters, she sees her husband there, reading a magazine. He says, "Hi, darling, your parents have come to visit us, so let them stay in our bedroom. Did you say hello?" One night, a guy was walking home when he saw a drunk man on his hands and knees under a streetlight, searching for something. Being a good Samaritan, he asked, "Hey, buddy, what are you looking for?" The drunk slurred, "I tripped, and my Rolex fell off." Feeling bad for him, the man got down and started searching too. After 10 minutes of finding nothing, he asked, "Are you sure you lost it here?" The drunk shook his head and pointed down the street. "Oh no, I tripped way over there." Confused, the man asked, "Then why are we looking here?" The drunk grinned, "Because the light's better here." Once upon a time, a king decided to spend the day fishing with his beloved queen. Before leaving the palace, he called in his royal weather expert. "Will it rain today?" he asked. "Not a single drop, Your Majesty," the forecaster declared with full confidence. "Clear skies all day." Satisfied, the king and queen packed their fishing gear and headed out. On the way, they passed a farmer riding a donkey. The old man tipped his hat and said kindly, "Your Highness, if you value staying dry, I'd turn back now. A storm is coming." The king laughed. "My dear farmer, I have a professional meteorologist with degrees, charts, and instruments. I trust him, not the ears of a donkey." And off the royal couple went. Within the hour, boom! Thunder cracked, skies turned black, and rain came down like buckets. The king and queen were soaked to the bone. Even the royal wig floated away. Back at the palace, dripping and furious, the king fired the official weather expert on the spot. He called for the farmer and said, "You were right. I want you to be my new weather advisor." The farmer scratched his head and replied, "Me? I'm no expert. I just look at my donkey. When his ears droop, I know rain is coming." The king nodded solemnly. "Then from now on, your donkey will be the official royal forecaster." And that, my friends, is how the first donkey got appointed to a high government position. A tradition that, unfortunately, is still alive and well in many places today. The old lady handed her bank card to a bank teller and said, "I would like to withdraw $500. The teller told her, "For withdrawals less than $5,000, please use the ATM." The old lady then asked, "Why?" The teller irritably told her, "These are rules. Please leave if there is no other matter. There is a queue behind you." She then returned the card to the old lady. The old lady remained silent. But then she returned the card to the teller and said, "Please help me withdraw all the money I have." The teller was astonished when she checked the account balance. She nodded her head, leaned down, and said to the old lady, "My apologies, Granny. You have $3.5 million in your account, and our bank does not have so much cash currently. Could you make an appointment and come again tomorrow?" The old lady then asked, "How much am I able to withdraw now?" The teller told her, "Any amount up to $300,000. The old lady then told the teller that she wanted to withdraw $300,000 from her account. The teller did so quickly and handed it to the old lady respectfully. The old lady kept $500 in her bag and asked the teller to deposit the balance of $290,500 back into her account. Patty and Mick are at a job interview for a laborer by a builder. Patty goes first and is asked, "If you lost an eye, what would you be?" He answers, "Half blind." Then he was asked, "What would you be if you lost both eyes?" He answers, "Blind." Builder says, "Great, you got the job. Send Mick in." Mick overheard the interview and thinks, "Great, I'll just give the same answers." The builder asks, "If you lost an ear, what would you be?" Mick says, "Half blind." Then was asked, "What about if you lost both ears?" Mick says, "Blind." The builder, a bit puzzled, asked, "How would that be?" Mick says, "My hat would fall down." A husband, a doctor, and his wife are having a fight at the breakfast table. Husband gets up in a rage and says, "And you are no good in bed either," and storms out of the house. After some time, he realizes he was nasty and decides to make amends and rings her up. She comes to the phone after many rings, and the irritated husband says, "What took you so long to answer to the phone?" She says, "I was in bed." "In bed this early, doing what?" "Getting a second opinion." A newlywed woman is getting ready for her first romantic dinner with her husband after the honeymoon. She looks a little worried and says, "Sweetie, I forgot to pack my bottom deodorant. Can we stop by a pharmacy?" Her husband chuckles. "Bottom deodorant? That's a thing?" She replies seriously, "Of course, I've been using it for years." They walk into the pharmacy and she heads to the counter. The assistant looks surprised. "Bottom deodorant? I don't think we carry that." The woman insists, "I've been buying it from here for months." The assistant, now unsure, says, "Let me get the pharmacist." The pharmacist walks in and asks, "How can I help you, ma'am?" She says again, "I'd like some bottom deodorant, please." The pharmacist says, "I'm sorry, but we don't sell anything like that." "But I always get it here," the woman insists. "Hold on, I'll bring the container." A little while later, she returns and hands over a stick of underarm deodorant. The pharmacist looks at it and says gently, "Ma'am, this is just regular underarm deodorant." The woman huffs, snatches it back, reads the label out loud and says, "It says right here, to apply, push up bottom." A chicken goes into the library, walks up to the librarian, and says, "Book." The librarian says, "You want a book?" "Book. Any book. Book." So the librarian gives the chicken a novel and off it goes. An hour later, the chicken comes back and says, "Book, book." The librarian says, "Now you want 2 books." "Book, book." So she gives the chicken 2 more novels. The chicken leaves, but again comes back later. Book, book, book. 3 books? Book, book, book. So the librarian gives the chicken 3 books, but she decides she'll follow the chicken and find out what's going on. And the chicken goes down the alley, out of town and toward the woods, into the woods and down to the river, down to the swamp. And there is a bullfrog. The chicken sets the books down by him. The bullfrog looks at the books and says, "Read it, read it, read it." A flying saucer landed at a gas station on a lonely country road. The two space aliens inside seemed completely unconcerned about detection. In fact, the letters UFO emblazoned in big, bold letters on one side of their shiny craft. As the station owner stood and gawked in silence, paralyzed with shock, his young attendant nonchalantly filled up the tank and waved to the two aliens as they took off. "Do you realize what just happened?" the station owner finally uttered. "Yeah," said attendant. "So? Didn't you see the space aliens in that vehicle?" "Yeah," repeated the attendant. "So? Didn't you see the letters UFO on the side of that vehicle?" "Yeah," repeated the attendant. "So? Don't you know what UFO means?" The attendant rolled his eyes. "Good grief, boss. I've been working here for 6 years. Of course, I know what UFO means. Unleaded fuel only." A well-dressed man walked into a small hotel and politely asked the manager, "Is room 39 available tonight?" The manager checked. "Yes, sir. It's free." "I'd like to reserve it," the man said. "And one more thing. I'll need a black knife, a 39-centimeter piece of white string, and one orange, exactly 73 grams. The manager raised an eyebrow, but agreed, curious about the odd request. The man went to his room quietly. He didn't order food, didn't ask for Wi-Fi, didn't request towels, nothing. But after midnight, strange noises came from room 39. Wild animal sounds, clanking metal, whispers. It was like a jungle, and a kitchen had collided. The manager stayed up all night, wondering what on earth was going on. But in the morning, when the man checked out, room 39 was spotless. The orange, the knife, and the string were all untouched on the table. A year passed. Same month, same man, same room, same requests, and again, the same bizarre midnight chaos. The manager, now losing sleep and sanity, was determined to get answers. On the third year, when the man came back yet again with the exact same routine, the manager finally asked, "Please, I have to know. What's happening in room 39? I won't tell a soul. I promise." The man leaned in and said, "If I tell you, you must never share it with anyone. Swear it." "I swear," the manager said, heart pounding. And so the man told him the secret. To this day, the manager hasn't told a single person what he heard, and I respect that. But when he finally cracks and tells me, I'll be sure to let you know. Until then, I'm off to confuse someone else with this story. Tag a friend and don't break the chain. They need to be just as confused as we are.